The Commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred.
Do that.
Well, let me start by saying I agree with the idea that it's not the length of the game that is really our issue. I think that it's more the pace of our game in terms of the amount of action, the elimination of dead time, making sure that pitchers work with pace so that the game moves along. I am also a believer that in terms of marketing the game, what your fans want is access to players. They want access, it's true of all professional athletes, it's true of entertainers generally, and I do think that it's incumbent upon baseball to try to work with the players to give fans that kind of access. What are we doing about it? We just did a big deal with Under Armour. For the first time in a couple of years, we're going to have Under Armour branding on the front of uniforms. Why do we do that? Obviously, it's a revenue producer for us, but more importantly, it gives us a consumer brand that is out there pushing our athletes, marketing our athletes, working with our athletes to give fans what they're looking for. What's another example? I think both the Home Run Derby and the upcoming Players Weekend are opportunities to take our athletes out of the quintessential team game and focus on those individuals. You saw it in the Home Run Derby with players like Aaron Judge. I think you're going to see it on Players Weekend with the opportunity to get, in a little looser atmosphere, give players an opportunity to give fans an insight into who they are.
Commissioner, we talk about, I agree with you, by the way, the pace of play within the game. People want more action. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed over the last couple of years is seeing a kid come up from AAA, the pace in which he throws the baseball, because he's already kind of accustomed to a pitch clock or gotten used to a pitch clock in AAA. Is this almost inevitable next year in your mind if you can get the Players Association to agree on it?
Well, we are very supportive of the idea of a pitch clock. Obviously, we'd like to make an agreement with the Players Association on the changes for next year. I think, I've always been a deal guy when it comes to the MLBPA. I think it's the best way to proceed, but I think a pitch clock is really important. Remember, of all the things that happen in a game, right, we throw 300 pitches a game. Right, and every few seconds matter, and I think we have been effective in terms of using the experiment in the minor league to do two things. Number one, to show it does move the game along, and number two, to give our players an opportunity to get used to a pitch clock. And, a substantial majority of our players have played with a pitch clock now when they're in the minor leagues, and they played effectively enough that they made it to the major leagues. So I think they could get used to it in big league games as well.
Rob, there's a lot going on, in this nation right now. And, I look at other sports like the NFL or specifically the NBA. You see a lot of these athletes speaking up and speaking out on social issues or just political issues. I don't really feel like I see it from Major League Baseball. Any idea why?
Well, look, we have never obviously done anything to prevent our athletes from speaking their mind, and we do in fact have players like Adam Jones who've been quite outspoken on social issues. I do think that a lot of us in the game, including me, believe that the best way we can comment on issues is by the way we act as opposed to what we say. And if you think about it, we have a workforce with tremendous diversity in terms of race, country of national origin, country of origin, native language, political beliefs. We have people all over the political spectrum, and I think the best statement you can make is that diverse group of human beings goes out every single day and plays the quintessential team game. And that's an example that I think merits some attention.
We hear the complaints people have, and I agree the length of the game is not an issue, but we hear a lot of complaints about different aspects of baseball. And obviously you are already talking about remedying some of those issues that you have. Is there something in baseball right now that you look at that your research tells you we've got to do something about this and we're not talking about it?
Look, I think the single biggest focus for us is the issue of dead time, and there's been a lot of conversation about it. I think for us, the view is if we can take out those moments in the game where nothing that affects the competition is going on in the field, if we can shorten up those periods of time, including things like commercial breaks, that will improve our product on the field, and it will not. We won't be changing the game in a way that could alienate our core fan audience. You have to be really careful in baseball about change. People are so invested in our game. They get very excited about the prospect of making a change that's going to alter the competition on the field, and so we've been very careful to try to avoid that.
Commissioner, I kind of feel that way too. I like the game the way it is, but I have to admit, at the World Baseball Classic, when you put a man on second base in the 10th inning, you see these 17, 18-inning games. It's almost like the baseball version of a shootout in hockey. I kind of liked it. And I kind of felt like people would then almost come back to the game in the 10th to see what happens. Was that a situation after seeing it at the World Baseball Classic that you liked, that you might recommend?
Look, we started experimenting with the extra inning rule in the very low minor leagues. And, we did that because, a lot of those games, there's not people in attendance. They're played in very warm areas during the summer, and there's not a lot of developmental reasons to play 18 innings, right? I mean, it's just no reason for it. We then used it in the WBC. I liked it in the WBC, but I know there's a lot of fan resistance, a lot of traditionalist resistance to this kind of rule, but I share your view. In a tournament like the WBC, I'm not suggesting I'm going to bring it to the big leagues right now, but in a tournament like the WBC, I think that extra inning rule is a real positive and produces some excitement.
Commissioner, we thank you for calling in and joining us here on the WEEI
and the donation.
Thank
you very much.
And the $25,000 check was pretty good as well. Thank you very much.
Listen, it's great to talk to you, and thanks for the good work you guys do on behalf of the Jimmy Fund.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
That's Rob Manfred.